Dumelang Sanbanani, hello South Africa, a very warm welcome to Expressions. This is definitely the place for you to air your views. I'm your host, Jacqueline MAPHALA.
I'm your host, Umkolisi Wagomasango. Now, Jackie, research there are about 1 million domestic workers in the country, and most of them are from the poorer sectors of society. See, Expressions, we take that and we look at the waves that women are doing in their various sectors. Ganjalunji, Joba sazi ukuthi in comes a wave of amazing women. Where Jackie, Joba seskwinyanga yabantu besifazane, we celebrate these women and look at the wonderful work that they do. Let's get you thinking with this insert. Take a look at it. Alright, so see Expressions, sesingene ku-August inyanga yabantu besifazane. Sikhulumisana nomama Manana, who is a female taxi driver, to find out about my challenges lawa ahlangabezana nawo in the field. Mama sikubingelele ku-Expressions. Thank you for the lovely ride. Mhlawumbe bangasitshela ukuthi how long have you been a female taxi driver?
Ke na le 14 years ke kganna di-taxi tsa mo Eldorado Park to town bapane. Ke yona industry e lengwe ke sebeditse ka yona nako e telele. I'm sure ke qadile gale mara ke le car wash. Hore ke sebetse mosebetsi we ke qadile gale ke le car wash yona mo renkeng go nka ka bala dilemo tse ke sa bitseng ka tsona renkeng. It's too much. Akusakhona lo count.
So mayazi siye sabona i-COVID-19 njengoba ifikile kithina sonke emhlabeni jikelele. It's affected indawo eziningi, imikhakha eminingi. Ngiyazi ukuthi ke futhi it's also affected the taxi industry as well. Ngifuna ukwazi kuwena ukuthi mhlambe ngabo konke lokhu ku-affect kanjani emsebenzini.
I-COVID-19 angithandi futhi angithandi ukukhuluma ngayo. It's ubuhlungu mare sometimes so izibuza ukuthi ngoba ngilayisha abantu ngoba sivele sabaspray phela awazi ukuthi uphethwe COVID-19 okayemphathanga uye endlini ukuthi uyothela abantwana awuzobathelela awazi mawufika endlini abantwana bayawujampela angeke uthi umntwana akho akajampeli mawufika fanele ubaphekele sometimes ufike upheke wenze yonke into awazi ukuthi wena uyuthelela awuyithelelanga okuyingenile okuyawukhetha.
Mangithatha ngibeke esithombeni mhlambe or usitshele la kwi-Expressions about ilanga lakho. What normally happens ngelanga mawuvuka ekseni uze emsebenzini wenza njani?
Ekseni mangivuka ekseni nje ngiyavuka. I'm sure ngizothi nginenhlanhla ngoba ngina ama special amaningi. Abantu baninda kakhulu ekseni ngoba mawuqala ukusebenza especially thina bomama ngabo ma winter so kuba nama challenges ngoba siyasaba ukuthathelwa imoto, siyasaba ku hijack mara luckily nama special amaningi especially ekseni. Iyo lento enginceda kakhulu kuba from ngo5 ngiqala ngo5 kulayisha ngilayisha abantu ba special sa5 be special sa6 from there ke ngibe ngisebenza normally as other drivers.
Tell me about your biggest frustrations, ikakhulukazi, where you are a woman, you're expected to be a nurturing figure, uphinde ke futhi uzongena kulo mkhakha lo nje that expects you to have a thick skin. How do you balance out the two?
Frustration ya ka ke yona ye go botsang ke ntate o bona like how la ishile la go mo late o mantsibu o sa tsebo bona o la ishile mang e mo motho o tla ka dingondo tsa hae ba bang ba hotella ba bang ba tlo djetsa go ba shota ka chelete ene gore monna ke nakong ke nka simple because nakong ha o le motho wa mosadi ba me ema mo line mo le ba bone wena motho a sena chelete ra no ke ba kopa mama o tlo ene ha ka ngwana moshima o ngwanyana a re hana chelete o palama o thola go mo taxi mo late nakong ke laisha batho ba ithuba ba sa patela ha bana chelete o tla ba sia ka passion na re nna ke wa bona motho mo le wa tlang honna o tla ka ntwela hore ke mme o tlang kutlela bohloko ene ke tshwanetse ke etse jwang.
How do you balance in role yokuthi ube umama at the same time ngapha, and then ubuye futhi uzoba la mawla erenkini. Hey, because ngikubonile uma la erenkini userious uma umelana nama male counterparts akho. How do you balance the two out between being a woman, a mother, as well as your job?
Eish, mawufuna uba umama, especially thina mina nje ngine abantwana babafana ngisebenza erenkeni ngifika nje sometimes uyazibuza ukuthi eish mawufika endlini umntwana sometimes ngishayisa ngabo 8 kuthi umntwana uzoyenzani angazosokolisa abantu estradeni mina mangikhona ufanele udlala iphathi yakho ukuthi mawufika endlini usendlini ukuthi la mangifika mangibeka umthetho uthi 8 o'clock mangifika ngabo 7 nguthola endlini usendlini iyo lama challenges siya pressa kakhulu ufanele ube straight mawumama bazi ukuthi hayi umama like kufanele la erenkeni babaningi bazi ukuthi la umanana lo umanana cha kuphela la lapha.
Okay masisikhuluma mhlambe ngama solutions ongathanda ukwabona mhlambe ama interventions from government ikakhulukazi for taxi drivers, for women in particular as well. What would you like to see happen?
I-solution yami wabona the way government bethe izonikethe taxi industry imali thina besitshela ukuthi nathi sibo taxi drivers countiwe la ngathi angazi ukuthi ucountiwe ama owner kuphela or ucountiwe kanjani thina sahlupheka abantu bama-taxi ngoba khona manje noma mangithi khona manje wabona ukuthi imoto singakanani ubona ngirawunti kangani abantu akunabantu understand uthola ukuthi ufuneka checking after checking ufanele ubalance izinto imali yemlungu imali yepetroli yonke into leyo is challenge for thina mama mari government bifi ibezozama ukuthi thina abo bantu bama-taxi abo taxi driver hayi ma-owner kuphela isincede nathi ukuthiwe nayo imali yabo taxi driver noma ingaba malini kuthiwa le yabo taxi driver le thina siholi mangawutshela ukuthi sometimes lengihola 150 200 understand and ubowazi ukuthi ujwayele uhola 1,000 rand or 800 incane kakhulu baba imali esihlanganisana nazo i-government if ibengasinceda ukuthi thina mo-taxi driver nje sincede ngalokuthi kancane nje lokho kuncane nje sizamele njengabanye abantu yebo.
Sibonge kakhulu mama for your time, and we wish you all the best, and we salute you njengomuntu wesifazane who is in this male dominated industry.
Ngiyabonga baba.
A big thank you to Manana for sharing her stories, her fears, as well as the challenges that she's facing in an extremely male-dominated space. But this is a powerful reminder that despite the challenges that women face, they're able to overcome despite those odds. We'll be back right after this. You are watching Expressions.
Siphinde sinibingelele sinamukele. You still with the Expressions, your #1 youth current affairs show. Njengoba sesingene kwinyanga ka-August, we reflect on the roles that women in the country continue to occupy namhlanje, as they also reflect on their struggles as well as triumphs in the various sectors that they are in. So COVID-19 has affected so many spheres of society, and the domestic workers sector is one of those as well. Says Teresa, sinibingelele sikwamukele kwi-Expressions.
Thank you for your time too, Bhuti Mxolisi.
All right. So, Siswami, we domestic worker, right? Mhlambe mangasithatha sibeke esithombeni ngama struggles ohlangabezana nawo njenge domestic workers.
Leko uqale i-lockdown. It's been hard ngoba ngaqala i-lockdown in March ngisemsebenzini wangithi umlungu you can't go home because of i-corona lay plus I need someone to help me when amawule unzoncedwa mbani ngavuma nami. Then kwathi sokuphambili sokukhanya ukuthi mina noma anytime angisakhona ukuyabona ifamily yami ngoba uthi yena ngagibela ama-taxi ngizobuya lo mkhuhlane endlini like i-corona yabo. Ngaqalisa ngisathi maybe for some time uzotshintsha la imind yakanika i-daily one la mithi you can go to your place or even lapho enrenta khona to just go see ukuthi kunjani endlini. But then as time went on, I wasn't given that opportunity. Ngathi ngiyambuza leke ngitshela khona ukuthi it's because of corona. But for me, it's not good because she goes out, she goes to her relatives, she comes with them in the house, the relatives. And sometimes they come and stay for days, whereby my work it will be it's too much. Because I now have to watch for more than the number of people I agreed to work for. I have to cook for them, I have to do all the work. And then she doesn't even add to my pay. I'm still getting the same money I was getting before, even the hours.
Sis Miriam, sikubingele sikwamukele nawe ku-Expressions. When usebenzela a company kanye nama families are multiple, right? Tell us about that.
Currently, from lockdown, I'm only left with one family, the one that I work for on Mondays and Fridays. And then I've lost almost all the other 2 families during the lockdown because of the COVID-19, actually. So I'm kind of like a little bit of struggling currently, because with the independent contractor, it's still a bit scarce to get like bookings to go to work. Like you work at your own time, at your own days, the days that you really feel like you want to go to work. But it's currently not as easy as like it used to be before COVID-19 to get a job like to go and work. So remember when the lockdown levels were like eased and people started going to work, I just sent a message to one of my employers and I asked her, okay, since now it seems like it has been at ease, like we've been eased, so can I come back to work? And then she sent me a message. It's like, no, I'm sorry, unfortunately I'm no longer able to come and pay for your services. And
Sesikhulumisana noSis Maggie, who is from the Izwi Domestic Workers Alliance, omela ama-rights abasebenzi basemakhishini, phecelezi domestic workers. George, Sis Wami, thank you so much for your time. What would you like to see happening as Izwi on the front ye-UIF, yama-domestic workers?
Tokuthi domestic work na 20 years isebenza ayiregistrwanga. I-Department of Labour imphoqi umqhashi ukuthi a-register le i-worker. And then mase sibuya kuma-migrant workers, i-Department of Labour mayithunyelwa isiya komlungu ihamba ne-migration. If mayifika lapho ukuthi ilande lokho ekulandile as a Department of Labour about umqhashi nomsebenzi, iqale idinge i-documentation kulo umsebenzi seboshwe iqala seliphelile.
So isikhathi esinzima lesi njengamanje sidila ngale COVID-19, and I know nabo sisi nabo boyithu made a point about I know usisi omunye thena umqhashi wakhe uthena ngasabuye emsebenzini, and I know akhona amanye ama-domestic workers abukele Expressions njengamanje mhlambe abasesimeni esifana nesakhe. What do you think they should be doing njengamanje?
Angibona ukuthi kuzoba i-dismissal sonke lesikhathi during this lockdown. So abasebenzi la kufanele bayihlukanise i-retrenchment ne-dismissal, ngoba most of the employers ngibona ngazathi bazoba retrench abasebenzi babo as long bezolandela i-procedure i-right. Kuzomela ukuthi abasebenzi bebeyazi ukuthi ama-rights wabo akuphi, amalungelo abo, ukuthi ngoba ngi-retrenchwa ngemva kweminyaka ewu-11 yini okumele ngiyithole ngemva kweminyaka ewu-11, than ukuthi uma usu-retrenchiwe wavumelana nomlungu wasayina phansi, into engabakhuthaza ngayo ungafaki i-signature ephepheni ongakalibali walizwisisa. Kunomehluko phakathi kokubala nokuzwisisa, which is reading and understanding. Sithola ukuthi abasebenzi abaningi bayavumelana nomlungu, akakalibali iphepha, ubona le 5,000 uyijabulele kanti bekumele ngawubhadala 20,000, afake signature yakhe imethi sekliwe, and then as long as ufake signature yakho uvumile ukuthi uzothatha le. So into engabakhuthaza yona ukuthi don't ever put your signature ephepheni ongalibalanga. Thola iphepha ulinikeze 1 week, ulibale, uli-understand, ulizwisise, bese uyavuma ukufaka i-signature yakho, ngoba uyofaka i-signature yakho entweni oncindezelwa kuyo. So bonke abasebenzi mabangasayini iphepha olibale wangalizwisisi, kunokubala kunokuzwisisa.
Okay, siswama sesikhuluma ngama-solutions or ama-interventions ongafisa ukuwabona as a person that stands for amalungelo or ama-domestic workers from government side, mhlambe kungaba imaphi?
I-government I think mayingasiza kakhulu, because i-government izonikeza kanjani ama-domestic workers inani lemali ukuthi ithi 15 rand per hour, ingayazi ukuthi yenzani phakathi kwaleyo ndlu, ngoba this is a minimum wage but it's not a living wage. Mayingancedisana le-Department of Labour yenze employers guide It can be a booklet, it can be a flyer, it can be online about procedure yoku-dismiss i-domestic work, i-procedure yokuqasha i-domestic worker, i-procedure yoku-retrench i-domestic worker, because most of the employers, they don't even know where to get it. They don't even know how to follow the procedure. Like ngiyaqasha umqashi wami la so far, ngoba singama-domestic worker nathi singabaqashwa sifuna i-payslip. Asiye ebhenki singama-domestic worker sinayo i-payslip, asinikezwa. Sifuna i-contract yevumelano ukuthi uzokwenzani nini ngasikhathi bani uphume ngasikhathi bani. Siyacela ezama-domestic worker, sicela i-contract, sicela i-payslip, sicela ukurejistwa e-Department of Labour for UIF, because as a domestic worker maternity leave awutholi lutho. Uzoba ku-4 months, awula mali ozoyiclaim e-Department of Labour because awurejistwanga. Akula muntu ozotsho ukuthi baphoqe ukuthi lo muntu usebenze for 20 years why engarejistwanga. Ayikho le question. Into nje khona nje ukuthi libanikeze 15 rand qha. Why bebe ngabaphushi ngayo yonke into kumele beyenze njengabaqhashi.
So a bit of formality and a bit of organization in that sector is what you're asking.
Yes, please.
All right.
Clearly, women are facing a lot of challenges and vulnerabilities in the spaces that they choose to serve in. And that was a very powerful insert. But stay with us. You are watching Expressions. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. You are watching Expressions. We're giving you the best kickstart to Women's Month, as we say halala to Imbokodo in the country. But we want to put a very special spotlight on the challenges and vulnerabilities that women face in domestic and public services. But in this particular segment, we want to focus on the rights that they should be understanding as they continue to serve. Umko spoke to an advocate. Take a look at this.
First of all, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today, We're Expressions. Baba, can you just please maybe give us a gist of what umsebenzi wakho entails?
Well, my work as a Gauteng Chief Inspector is to ensure compliance with employment law by inspecting workplaces to determine if they comply with different pieces of legislation, by investigating complaints and incidents that might happen in the workplace, by advocating employment law so that employers and employees know what their rights and obligations are in terms of employment law, and to ensure registration with both funds.
All right, speaking of the perfect employer-employee balance here, you just made mention of it. So we had a conversation about domestic workers, women in that particular sector. They feel like they are failed by legislation in a way. They feel like they're not really covered or considered. What is your stance as far as labor laws are concerned, particularly where domestic workers fit in?
Well, I think we've got to judge ourselves against the standards that are laid down by the International Labour Organization. And in terms of the International Labour Organization, which determines standards in the whole world, it has a decent work agenda. So every workplace to determine, or every sector to determine whether it complies with the decent work agenda, we've got to check against what we have done in order as a country to make sure that we achieve that. One, in terms of the domestic worker sector in South Africa, the decent work agenda checks whether we have a fair wage. Yes, we have a fair wage in our case. We would remember that we have regulated, at least in the national minimum wage, that domestic workers can, and they started by earning 15 rand per hour. That does not mean that it is enough, but at least the country has gone to greater strides in making sure that there is a fair wage and a wage that is determined. It might not be a living wage, I must accept, but it's a fair wage. And secondly, we've got to check whether there's a form of collective bargaining. Yes, that's where we're looking as a country. Remember, domestic workers work for a single employer most of the time. You don't have a lot of domestic workers working for one employer. So collective bargaining in the domestic worker sector would not be like in the mining sector and other sectors, where you've got a collective action and a collective approach by employees. In this case, we have got one employee and who's seated in a private household. So in that way, we have got a limitation of a workplace that is a private household. I think they've got a point there, but that's how far we could go as a country. But the third one will have to check against social security. to say how far have we advanced as a country to make sure that domestic workers are covered in terms of social security. And in South Africa, in 2002, we included them in the Unemployment Insurance Act. So now from 2002, they could be covered as workers like any other employee. And we went further to even amend the legislation and regulations to cater for them because they use multiple employers, and that is done in South Africa, and we are successful as a country in that regard.
I'd like for us to also speak about employers. Employers, are they legally obliged to register domestic workers ne-UIF as well as for compensation fund? And if bangakwenzi logo, is this a punishable offense?
Yes, they are legally obliged to register them with the Unemployment Insurance Fund. And in terms of the court case of October last year, they are even legally obliged to register them with the compensation fund. So now they are covered in terms of both funds. And if we found an employer who's not compliant, we've got to make sure that that employer becomes compliant by registering the domestic worker and has to pay all the money that had to be paid, by even the deduction that was supposed to be deducted from the domestic worker, which is 1%. In this case, we'll say employer, because you did not deduct it then, you must pay the whole 2%, and we charge even interest and penalties. So that's the extent to which we go to make sure that they are registered. So even if a domestic worker will be dismissed today, or will have to apply for unemployment insurance today and is not registered, that does not mean that she is going to lose that right. No, she or he's not going to lose the right, meaning that we will have to register that domestic worker retrospectively because it's not out of his or her own making.
There are lots of amazing takeaways from today's show in terms of understanding the rights that women face, the fears, as well as the challenges. But I think what is important for us to remember that despite the odds that women are facing, whether they're in the public or domestic services or spaces, they're able to overcome. So I hope, Kochaye, as we start and give you the best kickstart to Women's Month, that you are inspired to do the very best in whatever space that you're in, right, Mko?
Yeah, Jackie. I think some of my greatest takeouts from Namhlanje was just basically having those conversations with the women as they reflected on my challenges, but also spoke about triumphs that they've had in their different fields. We salute you so much. So, Bafethu, let's continue to celebrate as well as support and protect abantu besifazane in the country. Also, let's not forget why we're in August as a month of women. This is the month where we commemorate and celebrate the women who descended on the union buildings to say enough is enough against what they thought was unjust at that time. From all of us here at Expressions, we wish you a great evening going forward.
Adios, muchachos. We'll see you next week. Bye.